teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Today I'm reading part 13 of Ananda, Guardian of the Dhamma. The author is Helmuth Hecker. After the Buddha's Parinibbana. In verse, Ananda expressed his situation after the master's passing. My companion has passed away. The master too is gone. There is no friendship now that equals this. Mindfulness directed to the body. The old ones now have passed away. The new ones do not please me much. Today I meditate all alone, like a bird gone to its nest. After the funeral ceremonies were over, Ananda saw only one duty left for himself, namely, to attain total liberation as prophesied to him by the Buddha. Kassapa advised him to live in the forest in the province of Kosala, which was near the Mallas and the Sakyans. But when it became known that the Buddha's attendant was living in solitude in the forest nearby, he was inundated with his visitors. The lay disciples wanted to be consoled about the death of the Buddha and also about the deaths of Sariputta and Moggallana, and of their just and beloved King Asenadi. All four have died within the year. Day and night in the village and in the forest, Ananda had to console the lay disciples and was never alone. Thereupon a deity who lived in the forest, concerned about Ananda's spiritual progress, appeared to him and advised him as follows. Having entered the thicket at the foot of a tree, having placed Nibbana in your heart, meditate Gautama and be not negligent. What will this hullabaloo do for you? Exhorted by the deity, Ananda was stirred to a fresh sense of urgency. In the meantime, the Venerable Mahakassapa had decided to call a council of monks to strengthen the Dhamma in the Vinaya. Because of unsafe conditions in the country of Kosala, the council was to take place in the Rajagaha under the protection of King Ajatasattu. After 500 monks were to participate, among whom Ananda was the only one who was not an arahant. Ananda knew most of the discourses of the Buddha and therefore was indispensable to the council. When the date set for the council came closer, the Venerable Anuruddha suggested that Ananda should only be admitted if he could overcome the last cankers and attain arahantship. Anuruddha knew the power of such an incentive, and it had the intended effect. When Ananda heard this stern stipulation, he decided to apply every bit of strength he had to realize Nibbana. He practiced the 4 foundations of mindfulness throughout the night, sitting and walking, sitting and walking, sitting and walking. In the early hours of the morning, as he was preparing to lie down after a full night of striving, just when he had raised his legs off the ground but not yet laid his head on the pillow, his mind was released from all cankers. That day the council was to begin, and in the hope that he would succeed, a place had been reserved for him. Soon after the other monks were seated, Ananda arrived through the air by physic power and sat down in his seat. When Anuruddha and Kassapa saw this, they knew he had reached his goal and expressed their brotherly joy with him. Then they declared the council to open. During the council, Kassapa questioned the keeper of the discipline Upali about each rule and its origin, so that the Vinaya was laid down first. The next item on the agenda was the doctrine. Kassapa asked Ananda first about the longest discourses, which became the Digha Nikaya, then about the middle-length ones, which became the Majjhima Nikaya, and then about the other collections. After the recitation of the Dhamma and the Vinaya, Ananda mentioned those matters that the Buddha had left as a legacy within him to settle. He told the assembly that the master had allowed the minor and lesser rules to be abolished. The senior monks could not agree what was meant by the minor and lesser rules. Thereupon Kassapa spoke up. If now the Sangha starts abolishing rules, lay people will say that so soon after passing of the Blessed One, we have become lax. Since it is not known which rules were meant, it would be best not to abolish any of them. In that case, we shall be sure that we are not acting contrary to the master's wishes, and so it was done. The elder monks present said it had been a breach of discipline for Ananda not to ask what was meant by the minor rules, and he should confess this as a wrongdoing. Second, he was accused of having sewn a robe for the Blessed One after having stepped on the cloth. He replied that nothing had been further from his mind than disrespect for the Blessed One. Nevertheless, if the Venerable Ones considered it a wrongdoing, he would acknowledge it as such. Third, he was criticized for allowing the woman to salute the remains of the Blessed Ones first. He replied that at the time of the funeral, he thought this would enable the woman to return home before dark, and therefore he had allowed them to pay their homage first. But here too he would accept the verdict of his elders. The fourth accusation that the monks leveled at Ananda referred to his failure to beg the Blessed One to remain for an eon. Ananda defended himself by saying he had been possessed by Mara at the time, and therefore was not responsible for his actions. How could he have otherwise failed to make this request? Ananda's behavior in the face of these accusations were exemplary. He submitted to the judgment of the other elders, although he himself could not see any wrongdoing, a fact that he did not fail to mention. Subsequently, Ananda reported the second instruction that the Buddha had given immediately before his death, namely imposing the higher penalty on the monk Channa. The assembly requested Ananda himself to prevent this decision to Channa. Ananda objected that Channa was a violent and unruly person. The assembly advised him to take a number of the monks along. Leading a large group, he journeyed to Kosambi, where Channa was living, and he informed him of the last will of the Buddha, that he had been declared dead in the order. This penalty had been explained by the Buddha to the horse trainer Kesi. He would use it against the monks who could not be persuaded to reform their behavior either through admonition or discipline. Whoever could not be trained in this way would be considered as dead in the order. He would not be spoken to, whatever he did. When Channa heard this, he became so horrified that he fainted. When he regained his senses, he was deeply ashamed that the master had proclaimed this penalty against him as the last instruction to the order. He gave him the impetus to put forth his most strenuous effort, and within a short time he became an arahant. So this penalty showed itself to the Buddha's last act of compassion for the benefit and happiness of the monk Channa, being effective even after the Buddha's death. When Channa had become a holy one, he went to Ananda and begged him for a repeal of the penalty. Ananda replied that as soon as he had attained release from the cankers, the penalty had ceased to be operative. After the parinibbana of the Buddha, the Venerable Mahakassapa, as the most respected disciple, had taken over the guidance of the order. His status, however, was not that of a refuge, as the Buddha had been, nor was it that of a patriarch. He had simply the most authoritative and most highly revered of the monks, and he thus functioned, so to say, as the symbol for the observance of the Dhamma and the discipline. Everyone turned to him for his decisions on all questions regarding the order. In this way, he became the chief leader of the Sangha. After him, Ananda became the second leading elder, the second most venerated holy one, and was designated to look after the order. After he had already been a monk for over 40 years, he survived the Buddha by another 40 years, and after having been the personal attendant of the Buddha for 25 years, he became the foremost of the Arahants for a similar length of time. But at the time of the Second Council, 100 years after the Buddha's parinibbana, a personal disciple of Ananda was still alive. He was a very old monk named Sabakami, who it was said had been in the order for 120 years. When Ananda was 120 years old, he felt that his end was near. He went from Rajagaha on a journey to Vesali, just as his master had done. When the king of Magadha and the princes of Vesali heard that Ananda would soon attain final nibbana, they hurried to him from both directions to bid him farewell. In order to do justice to both sides, Ananda chose a way to die in keeping with his gentle nature. He raised himself into the air through his supernatural powers and let his body be consumed by the fire element. The relics were divided and the stupas erected. After his passing, the elders who complied the subsequent recension of the canon added 3 verses to his collection in the Theragatha. Theragatha of the great learning bearer of the Dhamma, the guardian of the great seer's treasure. Ananda, the eye of the entire world, has attained final nibbana. Of great learning, bearer of the Dhamma, the guardian of the great seer's adventure, Ananda, the eye of the entire world, was a dispeller of gloom in the darkness. The seer who was so retentive of keen memory and resolute, the elder sustaining the true Dhamma, Ananda was a mine of gems. The end. Here's the quote of the day. A fool who knows his foolishness is wise at least to that extent, but a fool who thinks himself wise is a fool indeed. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with heart of goodness luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find and give in unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness for reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. I hope you enjoyed listening to Ananda, Guardian of the Dhamma. Bye!